Thank you very much, Eddie. Everybody else begins their remarks by thanking Joe for inviting them. Joe, thank you for ruining my regular annual week's holiday by making me sing for my supper this year and making it much harder to relax. But that said, I'm glad to have an opportunity to talk about policing oversight and transformation. I have a script which should be available on the Policing Authority website. I probably won't read it all, or Eddie will be on my case, because I want to respond to some of the pieces that other speakers have mentioned. I suppose I was beginning my remarks, and I still want to start there, by reminding ourselves that the public, politicians, communities, rightly have very strong views about crime and about policing. This is the world over. This is nothing unique to Ireland. And police services the world over are conferred with great powers. And society consents to the use of those powers. This isn't wildly different from tax, by the way. Consents to the use of those powers and trusts that they will be used in the common good. And it's a simple equation, but it asks a lot of police services. And in Ireland, we ask a lot of the Garda Síochána, looked at from that perspective. Jim read out a long list from the Conroy report. The list I have here is not wildly dissimilar. We ask them to keep our families safe, our communities safe, in our homes, in our cars, in public places. We ask them to keep our country secure. We ask them to work with communities to meet diverse needs and expectations. We expect them to use the powers that we've given them when we're victims. So it's not a soft thing, this power. We want them to use those powers when we're victims of crime. We expect them to be the backstop for a huge range of society's problems. And that's asking a lot. And I just want to begin my remarks this afternoon by saying that guards do those things. They do use their powers proportionately. They do serve the community every day across this country. And I'd like to acknowledge with appreciation the service the Garda Síochána provides to the Irish people. Those expectations that we have of the Guards and the work they must of necessity do, and some of you on Wednesday will have seen the sharp end of that in a panel we had here on international terrorism, for example, it influences the way the culture of the organisation has been formed, and that's to be expected. So turning to the question posed in the title today, transforming into the Garda Síochána into a modern, effective and efficient police force. How? I have two quick comments to make before I get to the substance of it. First, I'd like to add the word more, to a more modern, efficient and effective, because the Guards do a lot of things very well. Secondly, my second brief comment is I would like to change the word force to service. This is not a pedantic point. It is a police service. Its mission, which is in its own mission, is to serve the community. And it's not just a question of sort of playing with words. It's to remind us and to remind them that their job is a public service job. So I actually read an article, by the way, which is slightly amusing, just to digress for a minute, an old article from the United States which said police officers don't like that word service because it's too feminine. So you can draw your own conclusions from that. Maybe that's why I like it. But the word is not in the vernacular. It's in the mission of the Guards, but it needs to be used every day because words matter. My more serious answer to the question of how to transform is to say that ultimately the job is for the Guards themselves, especially Garda leadership. You don't do transformation to any organisation. The rest of us, you, me, civil society, public commentators, Jim, the Taoiseach and so on, we have to play our part by changing the context in which they provide their service. But transforming any large organisation is down to the leadership and direction set by the head of that organisation and the top team, and her and their determination. And it's not easy. It's not easy to transform any large, long-established, and Conor gave us the history, effectively a 200-year-old organisation. a 200-year-old culture, certainly. It's not easy to do that. It's been likened to rewiring the house with the lights on. And there's all sorts of other management stuff about it, but it's common cause. It is not easy. Commissioner O'Sullivan has published a modernisation and renewal plan, which has been referred to, so I'll skip that paragraph. But the authority has congratulated the Commissioner on publishing the plan. We were particularly welcoming of the commitment in the plan to place victims at the heart of the Garda service, to increase the visibility of Gardaí, and the priority given in the plan to crime prevention. The act of publishing a plan like this is itself a change agent, but implementation often bedevils such plans. And Eddie Malloy's implementation deficit disorder from yesterday's discussion comes to mind. The authority will expect to see measurable progress in relation to the implementation. I spoke a minute ago about change in the context, and I'd like to explain what I mean. As I see it right now, the Gardaí have a number of very good reports prepared by the Inspectorate, particularly the last two, because they're the ones I know, which provide very useful guidance. And as I understand it, the Commissioner has accepted a lot of the recommendations. So there's guidance, there's a roadmap, there's acceptance of recommendations. The Government has provided a capital envelope, multi-year one, for way overdue investment in technology and equipment. And there is a political commitment, it seems to me, across the system, but explicitly in the Government programme, for a much larger Garda organisation over the next 5 years. Funding and government support are critical inputs if you want to change a public sector organisation. Over the next couple of years, the Gardaí are facing a demographic cliff. This is common in the public sector right now. They'll lose a lot of skills, expertise, corporate knowledge, and so on. But it's also an opportunity. Renewing the team is another context changer. And in the context of that, we would certainly, in the authority, be very keen to see the issues mentioned by both Jim and Conor considered as that Garda force or the Garda service expands, and also as vacancies arise with retirements and so on. I know members of the authority, while we haven't formally got into this area yet, it's one of our areas in our remit, but it takes a while to get there. But chatting with them, I know that they have very strong views and would certainly like to turn over those topics for discussion. Conor, I think I'm right that if you looked closely, there's one, if not two, PSNI officers in the Gardaí as we speak. Am I right? I see a nod down there. So there's one, if not two. Okay. And these things are important. They're important as change, as context changers. But the most significant context changer is you. It's openness, it's transparency, it's accountability that is quite properly being demanded by you of the public sector. A more enlightened, interested, informed public is challenging public administration and public sector organisations, and the Guards are no exception. Which brings me to the policing authority as a context changer. What can we do? I'm passionate about the importance of public confidence in key state institutions. As you might imagine, collecting tax I regard as one of those. But effective policing in which the community has confidence is absolutely essential in a democracy, in my view. It's enormously important for the well-being of society and for the coherence of society and the security of the state. But international experience shows that public confidence in policing is enhanced by civilian oversight. It's enhanced by transparency, where people can see how the police do their work, and it's enhanced by minimal political involvement in the day-to-day running of police services. And that's where the authority comes in as a context changer. Proposals for the establishment of a civilian body have been made many, many times, including here, and I'm in debt to Conor for a paper he wrote which said the GRA had a view about it about 35 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. So this is not new, but it's happened. It was described by the Minister for Justice and Equality as the most far-reaching reform of the Garda Síochána since the foundation of the state when we were established. It represents a significant depoliticisation of policing in Ireland. It changes the context in which the Gardaí do their work. It also changes the context for the political system. We're very new. We're not even 7 months old yet. We have a broad remit which is summed up as to oversee the performance of the Garda Síochána in relation to their policing functions. We have developed and just this week published the authority's first statement of strategy, and our overarching objective we have expressed in our mission, which is to drive excellent policing through valued and effective oversight and governance. Delivering on that mission will take time, constructive engagement, some intrusive challenge of Garda performance, of their governance and of the use of taxpayers' money. It will also involve us providing a showcase opportunities to show the work that the Gardaí and Garda staff do very well. I've been asked recently, what do we know about policing? Well, I'm not going to waste my 15 minutes reading out the names of the members of the authority, just to assure you that the law requires the members of the authority to have a range of expertise in policing, human rights and equality, public administration, governance and community engagement. And between the 9 of us, we tick all those boxes. And those boxes feed directly into the functions of the authority. There's about 2 pages of law setting out the functions, and you'll be pleased to know I'm not going to read those out either. Some of them look like boring managerial stuff. Approving strategy statements, developing priorities, setting targets, and so on. We have just approved and sent to the Taoiseach for her consent the Garda Síochána strategy statement for 2016 to 2018. It's a foundation document for the way we will oversee the performance of the Guards over the next couple of years. And that's when they stop being boring. That's when they become important documents. And when it's published, you'll see some performance indicators there. You'll see how the strategy statement will form a basis for us to ask questions about deployment, about response times, about victim services, about responses to serious and organised crime, about roads policing, to mention but a few. So that's one of our functions that has the potential to change culture. Setting targets, setting priorities and asking questions are very powerful. We will also be asking questions about the implementation of third-party reports, including the reports to which Bob Olson referred. We will be asking for measurable progress in implementing the modernisation renewal plan. We can pretty well ask about anything except security. We can review training and recruitment and governance. And just on Jim's point about training, I'd just like to express a little concern. The authority is concerned at an unmet need for in-service training. Fairly basic in-service training before you would come to third-level education, like training in DNA testing, training in interviewing skills, training in blue light driving. And we would be concerned if the resources started to be, if you like, dissipated in terms of new recruitment while there's unmet training needs for the existing Gardaí who are trying to do their jobs. Not in any way to say we don't think they should be better educated, but there's some basics that need to be covered. And I suppose the other thing that occurred to me, listening to Jim's remarks, is if the Organised Crime Bureau or the GBFI needs more forensic accountants, they should probably hire them and not be waiting for them to come through Templemore and up the ranks and sent to college. Hire them. The balance between sworn guards and civilians, as Bob has said, is very lopsided by international standards. And it's not about hiring clerical officers exclusively. It's about hiring experts that can come in and be experts the day they come in. So there's a definite gap, I would agree with that, but that gap isn't always going to be filled by promoting, however quickly, members of the Garda Síochána. So, from the point of view, having lost my track because I wanted to pick up on that point, Joe Mulholland, in the text of the programme, drew attention to a series of investigations and inquiries, and others have referred to them, and he referred to the authorities' concerns. The persistence of the performance failures over many inquiries was what drove the authorities' concern, and the view that it might not just be confined to one area. Our concern was not an academic one, and it wasn't to get at the guards. Our concern was about the impact on victims, about the damage to public confidence, which can in turn lead to non-compliance with the law and to non-reporting of crime. And the damage that the repeated corrosive nature of the repeat performance failures was having on the good work done every day by the women and men in the Garda Síochána, civilian and sworn. So from that point of view, the most significant context changer is that the authority meets the Commissioner and her senior team every month to ask questions. And this year, 5 of those meetings are in public, and like MacGill, they're webcast to the world, and they're archived, and they're there for everyone to see. And we have no choice about this. This is not an optional thing we do if we have time at the end of the month. This is our job according to the law. So while inquiries were once off, done, finished and put between a cover, we are not. And that's different, and it sets a very specific new context for transforming the Garda service, a context of continuous oversight. And we can be held accountable if we don't perform that function. And that's a kind of a new edge. From the point of view of culture, another important change we're responsible for is the nomination of the Commissioner. Now, you can have all the debates forever about whether we should do more than nominate, but it's a change, it's progress. We are responsible for appointing senior civilians. We will shortly be responsible for appointing senior Garda ranks. Those are significant culture changers. When a Garda inspector who wants to be a super has to apply to the policing authority instead of to Garda headquarters, that kind of looks a bit different. And in culture change, things like that, words, language, look, they're all important elements in changing culture. And another strong element to influence culture is ethics. There's been a reference already to the Code of Ethics in the College of Policing. The authority must, no choice, must prepare a Code of Ethics for the Guards by the end of this year. We've already had a preliminary public consultation. This is the commercial. So listen, we've had a preliminary public consultation. In about a month's time, we will put out a draft for public comment. So those of you that are interested in Garda culture and Garda ethics might want to look out for it, with a view to getting comments in the first half of September and then developing a final draft, which we will put in place before the end of the year. But writing Code of Ethics is only the start. Embedding it will be a challenge for the Garda leadership, and it will be a challenge for the authority. But the Garda have agreed to commission an independent culture audit. That will give us a baseline. If we get that underway soon, we'll know where we're starting from, and then we can see what kind of impact these various interventions are having, and that's important. We're big into measuring, by the way, in the authority. Anyway, a wise colleague used to say to me one time, it's not done until it's told, which is another way of looking at transparency. You may have heard the expression about the disinfecting qualities of light and transparency. It's an expression that's used often in tax, as you can imagine. Transparency is one of the key values of the authority. And like all good disinfectants, it can sting, but it's good for you. So having meetings with the Garda Commissioner in public, publishing our material, encouraging and advising the Commissioner to put as much data, reports, policies, etc. as she safely can in the public domain for scrutiny, discussion and comment are among the ways the authority will deliver on this value of transparency. And we've already made some welcome progress. In the context of one of the authority's meetings, the Commissioner published the Garda Protected Disclosure Policy for the first time. The Policing Authority will shortly review the policy, and that's work to be done. So I'm not commenting on the content, but what I am saying is it's out there, it's visible, and that is good in itself, because it wasn't there before. The Commissioner also published a public attitude survey recently. This has been available to the authority for some time, but we were very keen that everyone should see it. And I want to show it to you, because I think you should read it if you're interested in policing. It's a very important piece of work, and I commend the Commissioner for having commissioned it, and I commend her even more for having published it. And it will now be done on an ongoing basis, and the authority will be seeking to have it published on an ongoing basis. There's really good data in it about the experience of victims. There's data about unreported crime. There's data about the public's view of the types of crime which should be prioritised. And there are actually some surprising findings there in terms of the hierarchy when you kind of take account of public comment. So there's a few puzzles there. But 70% of respondents were satisfied or very satisfied with the service provided to their local community by the Guards. That's a number a lot of agencies would be proud of. I could go on at length about it, but Eddie has reminded me of my time. So in conclusion, I want to focus on one finding, which is that you, the general public, have a great deal of trust in the Guards. 85% of you have middle or high trust in the Garda Síochána. Now, given the backdrop of controversy, inquiries, given the absolute centrality of policing to everybody's lives, this is very good news. It's very good news that we trust them. We might have doubts about their performance. We can acknowledge that there are problems, and the Commissioner has readily acknowledged that there are problems. We can acknowledge there are lessons to be learned and work to be done, and work for the Policing Authority to do, making sure it's done. But we should acknowledge as a nation that community confidence in the Garda is deservedly very high. If I paraphrase the Policing Authority's vision, it is of a police service that continues to deserve that trust and to deserve public support by being professional, impartial and constantly improving. The authority will work very hard in the coming years to fulfil that vision. Thank you.